Yay.
Yes,
Sensei. Small talk out of the way. How are you, Doshin?
that is, I would have to take a position of me, and then I couldn't take the position of me-lessness if I answered that question.
Yo, yo, yo. That was in conversation the other day. It's like, I'm a Taoist, but the Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao, so I'm an untaoist. But then there's an untaoist. Dude, I'm so Taoist.
Exactly. You know, the when Buddhism with
Hmm.
Bodhidharma moves from India to China, it beautifully merged. And this is the second turning of Buddhism. The first turning of Buddhism, you had a Chinese emperor. You had Emperor Wu. He was first turning Buddhist. He was a Hinayana Buddhist. And
That's
when
true.
Bodhidharma came, he was Mahayana. And there's a very big changes between Hinayana and Mahayana Buddhism. And that's where Zen was born in China, China. You know,
Hmm.
jhana, dhyana, Pali is jhana, Sanskrit is dhyana, Chinese is chana, Japanese is zena. So this pure awareness moved and it evolved.
Hmm.
The context in which the pure awareness was taught and received evolved. And something was lost and something was gained in most of these changes. And what was added that made Chan, which is also Zen, was Taoism.
Hmm.
Mahayana Buddhism and Chinese Taoism are Chana, pure awareness.
Hmm.
So this is just this what integral Zen is doing. Well, let's talk about the path. The path of first turning of Buddhism in India, Hinayana Buddhism, Theravadan Buddhism, is really discipline. You follow the rules, and the rules are written down for monks and nuns, and the rules are severe. It's an aesthetic practice. You have to deny yourself any pleasure. You have to purify all the hindrances, the the greed, the hatred and anger and the ignorance and the pride and these are the horrible poisonous hindrances. And then there's the leftover, the lack of generosity, the selfishness, the laziness, the sloth, the undisciplinedness, and the anxiety, the angst and worry. All these have to be purified, and underneath them, if there's healing that needs to happen, it needs to happen. So this was what it was all about: discipline. And when you disciplined yourself enough to purify the self from all these impurities, and you practiced the virtues and became a better person, then you became an arhat and you didn't have to go through the cycle of rebirth. We're free. Now, Mahayana Buddhism added something. It added the bodhisattva vow.
Um, I
Now,
don't want
I don't
Nirvana. I come back and serve.
benefit all beings.
Hmm.
And Vajrayana Buddhism, which got away, kind of rejected the Taoist stuff and adopted the Hindu stuff,
Hmm.
it added something too. And what it added was bodhicitta.
Mm.
And the best description of what embodied bodhicitta would look like, if I were to find somebody that had embodied it, and I haven't met anybody yet, I heard of one once, but it would be someone who lives constantly unconditional love, selfless compassion, zero reactivity, and boundless joy. Undisturbable. These four immeasurables that can't be measured or articulated, put into words, would be undisturbable, always here, present, and available. Now, that's bodhicitta. Uh, when I look at my Tai Chi teacher, my Chinese Tai Chi teacher, I see someone who has mastered, disciplined what he calls the unconscious mind, which is the body. And I see someone who's a healer,
Mm.
but I don't see someone who's embodying the bodhisattva view or vow. He's not interested in benefiting all beings. He's interested in passing on his teaching, and he doesn't give a shit whether it's one or five students. And he teaches everybody, and he doesn't turn anybody away unless they stop treating him like a teacher. And then how he solves this problem that you're struggling with, that won't work in San Francisco, but it works in Boulder, which is pretty close. He starts to talk about killing. He's a he's a he's a special forces. He's
Ah,
a
ah.
war hardened veteran. And he comes from an interesting lineage. So he just starts talking about the same energy that I use to heal you, I can destroy you with. And then he starts talking about the destroying part. And
Mm.
all the people that are wanting to feel good and wanting to be safe get terrified and they run to the forest.
Well, Doshin, if I may interject right at this moment, there is an instance that's fresh.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I've passed on my morning class to a disciple inheritor, and I rarely go anymore. I just happened to go with my son the other day, and there's a particular exercise where snap out your feet, you know, kick your feet out. And it's just a low kick, and we can go on and on about the health benefits, but they were doing it too soft and too slow. And then so I could have gone on at length about how to perform it correctly, but I just chose to say, hey, break an ankle. You're breaking an ankle. Kick like that. And then, they did. But then afterward, my disciple, bless her heart, she was kind of tidying up after me, if you will. And she was like, oh, he didn't mean that. It's like if you're kicking at a yiping dog, you know? And I said, no, no, no.
Break an ankle.
Break an ankle, and not just any, break a horse ankle. Kick a fucking cavalry down, right? And then, woo, that wasn't received well. And it actually kind of stirred the pot quite a bit, and actually invited a challenge of sorts. Oh, that's not how we do this here. And this is the class just so happens to be held at a Catholic cathedral. It's where I curated that community. And so this is a church, and this is a sacred space, and we have elders here. And are you promoting violence?
Yeah.
Should we be kicking each other? I don't want to be kicked out of this space. This is sacred space. And I had to remind them, oh, this is sacred practice from a sacred Taoist temple. But there's sword and sheath, and just sheath doesn't work. No more than just sword works. And so we need sword and sheath, and
Yeah.
you know, and so the conversation ended there, but there was definitely an aftertaste, if you will.
Well, there was more than that. There was an us and a them that emerged that had always been there, but it was like the earthquake is always ready to erupt. But all of a sudden, the fault line hits in the earthquake. You see the fault. And there's a fault there. It's a us and them that is unconscious. And, in integral terms, this is a level of development.
Mm,
This is a postmodern belief system and value system that is incompatible with an amber or an orange value belief system.
mm. And this is the spiral dynamics kind of stuff.
Well, spiral dynamics is kind of a twisted,
Mm,
perverted version of this.
hmm
Wilbur's version is much more comprehensive and useful.
hmm
Spiral
And
dynamics is it's like a third eye that's only half open and kind of crooked.
heard. And then we're talking about Ken Wilber's contributions, right?
Yes,
Because I'm just interjecting a bit of context for the people
yes.
that may not understand, right?
Yeah, please. Yeah. So it's the colors, and spiral dynamic uses one color, and
Hmm
it's actually let's individual human beings develop. And a really good way to get a felt sense of the way that individual human beings develop is to use the chakras. Keep in
mm
mind, there are many chakra systems, and they're
hmm
all kind of talking about the same thing, but they divide up the pie in different ways.
Heard.
So I like to use the popular chakras. There's
hmm
7 chakras. And I equate these 7 chakras, which is a trick that I learned from Ken Wilber himself, to these levels of human development that can't be skipped. And this is a revolutionary new way to look at both human development and human awakening. Because what Ken Wilber realized and systematized in a way that can be taught and a way that can be realized is there's not one process of awakening
There's
or
multiple.
evolving, there's
Mhm.
2 processes that are interrelated, intertwined. You can't say that there's one, you can't say that there's not one. You can't say that there's both two or that there's neither. All you can say is healing and awakening. And I simplified development under the category of healing.
hmm
It's a subcategory of healing, developing. You can't say that all you can say is they're not two. You can't say that they're one because then you're back to dualistic thinking. There's one and there's two. That's 2 positions. All you can say is they're not two. That's Nagarjuna's teaching of that's what began Mahayana Buddhism in about the 2nd century CE.
mm
That's
Yeah,
what
I get it.
that's what came to China and merged with Taoism. So here's how I have dealt with this same moral dilemma.
Hmm
After just taking the same tactic like, fuck you, this is what we're going to do. That's
Yeah.
my, that's how an 8 on the Enneagram would deal with it. This is just the way it is. If you don't like it, get out. And
Mm,
everybody leaves in San Francisco. So, a more skillful way that I learned to deal with this is when I see someone is afraid and they're feeling not safe. And I know that if they're not safe, their heart is closed. And if their heart is closed, they're not, I can't teach them. I can't be their teacher. I can't heal them. If your heart's closed, you can't heal. So what I do is I say, I'm noticing that you have a perspective, a view where you don't feel safe. And I'm curious about something. Have you ever really had to face your fear of not being safe? Have you ever lived in an environment like the Bronx, the South Bronx, or the South Side of Chicago, or the Watts area of LA, or Gaza Strip, or Ukraine right now? Have you ever lived in an environment where your life was in danger and you surrendered to the fact that you might not live through the night? And they always, when I present it like that, and I usually do it, I soften it because what I really want them to do is I don't want that to break their ankle. I want them to realize they're afraid that they might break their ankle. And I want them to open their heart a little bit so that they can see that being so serious and doing it completely as if you were going to break your ankle, the value that they will receive, the benefit that they will receive from putting it wholeheartedly rather than half assed because their heart is closed. And it opens a crack. It usually doesn't change anything. But if I notice that the crack, that hard sarcophagus, the shell of their heart, has just had a little crack and a little opening, and a little light has come in, then I know that there's something there that could grow. And if it I don't see a crack and I don't see any light, I just let them go their own way and realize I can't help, I can't heal or teach this person. As your teacher said, who I loved, if they don't see me as a teacher, I don't try to teach them. I don't teach them. It's so simple. If they
Yeah,
don't see me as a healer,
I can't
I
heal them.
don't heal them.
Yeah. It's kind of like don't give unwanted advice.
Don't give way.
Unwanted advice or unwarranted advice.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like mind your own business.
Dharma rule number one. Mind your damn business.
Byron Katie, who's one of those 1 in 10 million people who just had a spontaneous awakening. That wasn't spontaneous, of course. We don't know how
Uh,
many lifetimes this karma's been unfolding that suddenly woke up in her body.
mm,
But she said, I've learned, she said, that there's your business and there's my business and there's God's business. And I've learned that I just have to mind my own business.
mm. Well, thank you for this recount because the way the rest of that session ended up unfolding is I walked around and played with the students, and I specifically used martial language of break through stagnation and rip apart the limitations, and pull this taut and stab, or press. And I specifically used very martial language throughout the rest of that day. So thank you for that insight. I clearly still have
Well,
a lot
that
more to grow.
will reveal to you which hearts have a crack
Hmm.
that there's anything, the rest of the hearts that don't crack, you might as well let them go. They were never, they, the karma, they haven't accumulated enough merit to receive your teachings. So
Mm.
let them go. Let them
Yeah.
go where they need to go.
My dad used to say, the dumb won't listen and the smart already know.
William Butler Yeats, the poem, The Second Coming. It's a really terrifying poem to read. He said, the best lack all conviction, and the worst are full of passionate intensity.
Wow, I love all this language around middle path. So, if we may, I, this is a bit of a tangent, but it's an interesting one because I'm seeing now Buddhism as a malleable thing. It goes to Tibet, it has a flavor. It goes to China, it has a flavor. It goes to Japan, it has a flavor. It goes to Korea, it has a flavor. It goes to Thailand, has a flavor. It goes to Holland, has a flavor. It goes to San Francisco, has a flavor. Wherever Buddhism lands, it's like tofu. It just takes on the sauce.
This is Chan Buddhism.
Hmm.
This isn't other forms of Buddhism.
Tell me more.
Well, when Buddhism came to America, it produced some American Zen masters when Zen came to America. When Tibetan Buddhism came to America, it didn't produce any American Rinpoches that I've
Sure.
been able to find. There's
Steven
some
Seagal.
American lamas, and
Isn't
the
Steven
flavor of
Seagal a
America.
toku?
I'm sorry.
Steven Seagal's a toku.
Um,
Sorry, very poorly placed joke
yeah,
of Steven Seagal. Sorry.
yeah. I will. I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not going to feed that joke because some people will misinterpret it. So I'm just going to ignore it.
Mm.
I'm going to bow to it and ignore it because I don't want to feed it. What gives it the flavor is Zen came to America. Certain individuals who were students adequately awoke according to their teachers, their Japanese and their Chinese teachers, and they reinterpreted all the Zen and Chan teachings so they could present it to the common people in America. Now, the first problem is that remember there's two things going on. There's awakening and there's evolution, development. And there's healthy development, there's healthy awakening, and there's unhealthy awakening and unhealthy development. The Japanese and Chinese Zen masters, who were at the traditional religious rule set of stage of development, couldn't see that the Americans were more developed than they were. And the Americans couldn't see that the Japanese were more enlightened, awake than they were. So there was a problem. There was a twisted. The Japanese couldn't see the Americans' shadows and traumas and dysfunctions, and the Americans couldn't see that the Japanese were far more awake and present than they were. And this created a problem that we're still suffering with. And this is invisible without understanding that they're both essential. And this is why I say that you can't fully awaken if you're not healed. So you have to bring the healing up, and then you can't fully heal unless you're awake. So it's like this. It's really a spiral because life is circular. The right brain sees a spiral, the left brain sees linear progress. You need both brains fully online so that you don't miss something really important. Because if you miss something fully important, you get unhealthy and twisted, and demons take over.
I like how you said you get unhealthy, but you pointed at yourself.
This is the metaphorical you that is all of us. This
Oh,
instead of you
Doshin.
specifically, this is, in English we say y'all. This is y'all. This is all of us.
Uh-huh. Hmm.
So, given this, I want to go back to something I didn't complete in the last discussion
Yeah.
before you brought us down this avenue. So, if I don't feel safe,
Yeah.
my heart is closed, and I don't have enough power, third chakra, power chakra, I haven't developed, my power has been crushed. I'm helpless, I'm victim, and I'm stuck in victim. What I need is to kick like I'm breaking my ankle. And when I see how much power I get out of doing that, then I have enough power to pull myself up by the bootstraps and stop being helpless. One of my students, who I made a teacher and a Dharma heir, started doing what we call red kinhin. So, kinhin is walking meditation. So he noticed that where we were, the people were powerless. They were stuck in this helpless victim mentality, which is so prevalent when people don't feel safe. So this is what we did. We started walking and we started bringing in power into the walk. So first we would just thrust our hands down and then we'd start grunting. And then we get our whole body into it. And what we're doing is we're cultivating anger, angry chi. We are afraid to be angry. We've suppressed our anger because we'd get killed. There's only room for one angry person in a family or in a sangha. There's only one emperor. And if you go against the emperor, that's how he fixes the problem. So as we were doing that, and then we would really fully embody this energy of anger, but we don't call it anger, it's aggression. It's kicking like you're going to break your ankle. And you get power from that. You actually learn something, and it makes you stronger and more powerful. But you have to master it. An angry warrior is a dead warrior. So we don't want to leave you angry. So we bring up all this chi, and then we march right back in the zendo and we sit. And you can't move. So you got all this energy and you can't move. You just can't move. You can't say anything, you just have to sit with it. And when you do that over time, it's amazing what happens. That's like break your ankle, but you're empowering yourself. And it needs to be facilitated by somebody that knows what they're doing, that's awake enough and healthy enough that you're not going to turn people loose out there with a 3-year-old temper tantrum, because that's where their anger got repressed. It Under the right conditions, and you need the right conditions, you need a teacher and a healer to guide you through this. It gives you the power you need to stop being a bloody victim.
And that's what ends up happening in my view. It's we end up cultivating a community of victims, and that's why I get so riled up about it. And then here I am furthering the same symptoms.
So if I were to zen this out,
What'd you say? Zen this out?
it's already been zenned out.
uh,
A Zen teacher, uh, Stephen Levine, he did a lot of work on death row. He wrote a book, A Year to Live. And this is a direct quote from him after working in these kind of victim sanghas. He said, "Safety is the most unsafe spiritual path you can take. It leaves you frozen in fear, unable to take risks, unable to learn, and I would add, unable to heal and unable to awaken because you're frozen in fear. Your heart is closed," I would add. "And you don't have the power or the stamina to just become one with your fear of not being safe. If you don't feel safe, you can't awaken, you can't heal, you can't do any shadow work because you're addicted to feeling good. You know, my Tai Chi teacher says, if you walk into a class and they're smiling, walk out. They're not learning anything. And if you walk into a class and they're all angry, walk out. They can't control their emotions. They haven't learned anything. So that's what I do.
bro. Wow. Wow.
But that's a double-edged sword too. You know, I go to the
Yeah.
opposite extreme.
Yeah.
You know, I'm an aide. I want to be in charge. I'm like the emperor. You know, I long those days are gone where we had emperors.
Uh-huh.
But an eight wants to be the emperor and wants to control
Heard.
everything. So this is where I stumble. I had the good fortune, enough merit to stumble across Janelle, who really pointed me toward the healing. I'm not a healer. You know, I'm a
Shout out
boy in
Janelle.
a china shop.
Yeah.
So she's softening me. She's healing what made me an eight, which is the karma. It's the karma that is slowly healing. The conditions are right where that can heal.
Hmm.
And now I can feel the compassion. I have the wisdom to know the difference between when to be tough and when to be open and compassionate.
Heard.
I'm working on it. I'm not there yet. There is no there to get.
Heard.
So my teacher had quoted Rumi, and he said, you know, officially, this is Zen. Officially, not a single hair will cross this line. Unofficially, caravans of camels come through. And the wisdom to know the difference, and the capacity to see what causes harm unnecessarily, and what benefits all beings. Surrendering your intensity that you have earned by devoted practice enough to become a lineage holder, to receive the, the, the responsibility to teach this. So you can't compromise that integrity. That means something. But nor can you be a bull in a china shop and not realize that too much of anything causes suffering. Too much water will kill you. And a healer knows just the right amounts, perfect balance. This is the Tao. This is the Taoism and wedded to Buddhism. There, that's enough.
You know, I had another question for you. I wanted to ask if you could give me a koan, considering that this is integral Zen tradition. And I guess I don't need to ask anymore. Thank you. I have one to chew on. Wow.
Well, here's a koan for you.
Okay.
Who sees the inexorable unfolding of karma?
Wow, you had me at who?
When you get the who, we'll say what.
Yeah. And then the where, when, why, and how too, I suppose, huh?
What gets in the way of seeing the inexorable unfolding of karma and allowing it to unfold?
Wow, there goes my meanness.
And your weeness. To answer this koan, the bubble of me must explode. It's like, gets so tight and then it goes, no me. And then the bubble of weeness gets so tight, so cumbersome, and such a prison. Take an axe to the prison wall. Be reborn into a world of color, as Rumi said. Or Coleman Barks said that Rumi said.
Oh man, good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
thank you for that because that morning class it's special to me. I specifically chose that cathedral. I was there 6, 7 days a week for 7, 8 years, and I'd probably still be there had it not been for COVID, stopping it all. And when my students took it upon themselves to keep going in spite of, they kind of just took it and gave it a life of its own. And I was just oh so touched, you know. And I'm a father now, and my schedule's different, and so I haven't made it over there much. But this one time I went, and it was really sweet to see a new group of faces still doing the same basic exercises. And it's daylight savings. It's effectively winter now, according to our calendar, and it's cold in the mornings, and they are out there. And so I have nothing but praise for what they've done, and I want to support them and help them further their efforts. Um, However, this conversation of passing on the lineage with integrity is important to me, and so it's a fine line to navigate when we play bridge of an ancestral tradition directly from the temple to a new community here in the Western world. Because if we do it the way we do here, it's not recognized there. But if we do it the way we do there, it wouldn't make it here. And so it has to transform, you know. And uh, so yeah, it's interesting to see how these things continue to
It has
evolve and
to
morph.
transform, but it has to retain the integrity.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's why I kind of let go of forms or choreographies and leaned more on principles. Because, you know, if it's a matter of choreography, it takes a certain body type constitution to do it just right. But if it's a matter of principle, you know, we can all explore it artistically and creatively. And so,
Well, the traditional way in China was
mhm,
we don't teach anybody that's not Chinese.
mhm. It's true. The doors have opened a bit since, but even still, Chinese, they want to see your work ethic, they want to see your character. Uh, and oftentimes they hold on to secrets because they don't know them themselves or haven't unlocked them themselves. I
There's
see a lot of that too.
there's a lot to learn.
Hmm.
And
Mm.
sometimes you have to go to many teachers to figure out, oh, that one's got one of the four corners, and that one has another of the four corners, and that one has another, but we still don't have that corner. And then there's the eight directions. There's not just four corners. And then there's the 10 directions. So it never
I
ends.
can't forget up and down. Oh man, Doshin. Well, you know, we started with quite a bit of a warm up and we started recording a little into the hour. However, my wife wants to use the clinic. And so
Well,
perhaps we could wrap this up because I wanted to
happy
talk
wife,
about,
happy life. So don't upset the wife.
for sure, for sure. I love you, honey. And so um, I wanted to talk about relationship to trauma. I wanted to talk about um, Bodhidharma's practice and his contribution. And because, you know, I have Bodhidharma right here over my shoulder, you know, and so
Oh,
he's, you know, I do have Shaolin
Uti
background. And
Tamo Chanchi.
hell yeah. And I'd be curious to know if Guan Yin shows up at all uh, in the Zen view. And I remember we were talking about the space for the divine too, the celestial and the divine, right? And so these are wonderful things that I still want to explore with you. So would it be okay if we do this
Oh,
again?
I guess so. Let me just get out of the way. Let true Dharma continue, because it will, whether I'm in the way or not.
And I'm just going to keep treating you like a teacher. So
Be careful. My condolences. You may change your mind at some point. Many have.
uh, what does they say? Point a finger, three point right back.
You know, one of my students, who's no longer one of my students,
Uh-huh.
I empowered him to teach. And he did. He wanted to teach, but he didn't have the right reason he wanted to teach. So when I
Mm,
saw what he was teaching, I said, oh, I can't support that. So he stopped treating me like a teacher, and I stopped supporting what he thought were his teachings. And it was sad. It's very sad.
mm,
But I
mm,
I just can't allow, I can't contribute to someone who's creating unnecessary harm and suffering for others.
mhm.
And that's all that's my business. What he's doing is none of my business.
Uh-huh.
But what I'm doing is my business. I have to take it seriously.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's a reality of, the view gets twisted. The that could happen, or there could also be just the lineage inheritor is only a parrot. They don't really have true embodiment. And there's also, there's all kinds of inheritors, and
there's
this is
infinite
another
possibilities.
conversation. How do we choose inheritors?
Yeah.
And who are we? Do we really even have something worth inheriting?
And do we have any choice? Choice is highly overrated.
See. All right, we're gonna go on forever. Doshin! Thank you kindly.